little podcast we're calling Gene's Place. Do you want to give a little background on it?
Yeah, I'll give a little background. So we're sitting at my home in the basement, a pool room bar kind of vibe that my wife and I kind of came up with. The name of it is Gene's Place, named after my wife's grandfather. So yeah, that's where the name of it came from. And
Yeah, and I feel like when we first talked about doing a podcast, I'm like, because there's, I mean, you can do it anywhere. It doesn't really matter. But then when I came down here after we had talked about it, I was like, man, they already have like the perfect setup. Like
Yeah.
it's got this really cool, like laid back bar feel, just a small, cool hangout place that you would want to sit, have a drink with your buddies,
Yep.
just talk, shoot
Right.
the shit,
yeah,
So we got this set up and we're ready to go.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the feel of this whole thing that we're kind of going for is just like casual shooting the shit
Yeah.
kind of idea.
Yeah, and that's what I think that's why the name fell in place so easily.
Yeah.
Because this room was already built around my great grandpa, in memory of him, and it's a really cool thing to just have in their home, and now we're expanding upon that by filming a podcast in here and kind of keeping that going. So, and I think going forward too. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be just us the entire time. I'm sure we'll probably have.
Oh yeah,
Some-
we're gonna have some major guests on here.
some major guests in the future, but definitely some different faces on here from time to time, and I think that's gonna really give like a very dynamic feel to this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. There's gonna be a greater variety of topics. Not that you and I can't come up with a huge variety of topics.
Right. We could talk about anything.
But some of the other people that we've talked about being involved with this bring a whole different, I guess, perspective or
Right.
set of topics to it on their own. So
Yeah, and like I think the cool thing about that, and like that's the problem, like with especially now how since before like the whole COVID shutdown, podcasts just blew up during that whole thing. And not that they weren't popular before,
right,
but I mean that's what everybody was doing. Like everybody was locked inside.
yeah,
People creating content, doing things, whatever. But like podcasts were the main thing that just blew up for a lot of people. A lot of celebrities, a lot of just general, like regular people doing the same thing. And feel like what we're going for will kind of help us, stand out from the variety of podcasts out there because we're not really sticking to any particular niche or, we're kind of, it's going to be laid back and more of just a hangout for not just us, but for the audience too.
yeah, yeah, and kind of we could talk about anything. We're not going to like pigeonhole ourselves into a particular type of conversation, whether it be music or movies or politics or whatever.
Right.
It's going to be kind of like a whole variety of.
Yeah, I feel
stuff
like
we
it's
can
just
talk
kind
about.
of just life really in general.
Yeah.
Just everything that any two people that are on here, whatever interests they share or things they like to talk about, that's kind of what it's for.
Yeah,
Because, and like when most of us get together anyway, we just talk about everything.
right.
And I think
That's
the
true.
best thing you could do at this point is just hit record.
I agree. Yeah,
There's not really much different except for people might be listening. So,
yeah. No, I agree.
but yeah,
But yeah, the vibe in here is
I like
I
it.
think it's awesome.
It's comfortable,
Yeah.
you know.
And we didn't have to go out and try to figure out a place to like do this and like make it all decorated.
Yeah, and
all that.
I would have been totally fine with doing just audio because most podcasts, you listen to on Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. I think there's something a little more engaging and personal when you do a video podcast, and like I know most of the people I listen to now are all video podcasts.
Me too.
Or at least they do majority of their episodes in video.
Yeah,
And
right, me too.
I notice like I engage more and get more involved and like more excited to watch or listen to those people because like you're familiar with their faces and
Yeah.
kind of like their whole idea of, how they're operating. So
I find that I agree. I find myself more engaged when I'm watching and listening more intently than if I'm
Right.
like driving and listening to a podcast, because it's kind of like when you're driving and you're listening to music, you're thinking about 10,000 things. And
Yeah.
you could miss 10 minutes of an episode just because you're thinking
Right.
about something else.
yeah.
But when I'm watching it and I like to see how people how their body language is.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and
right.
see how people react to questions or how people react to answers to
Yeah.
those questions and stuff. I think that's
And that's the cool thing about just being human in general is like there's so much more when you're seeing somebody's reaction to something.
yeah,
Because like you could laugh about a joke or whatever, or like just anything, whatever you're hearing on the audio, but then when you see the visual of it is what's
yeah,
I think just the best part about it. And you know, I I listen to a really big movie podcast that's really good, and then I listen to a true crime one too. These two girls that have a really good. And like I said, that's the thing. They have a video podcast, and like you feel like at some point, like you're just hanging out with them. You know,
right.
I'm sure you feel the same way about some you watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And like there are some, like there's this wildlife one I love. Like I listen to this one. It's really good. I've got super into like wildlife recently. And it's called Tooth and Claw, and it's this biologist and his brother and his other kid, and they talk about like just animals and animal attacks, like some of like the most gruesome ones too.
Okay.
And they're only audio, and I feel like there would be something. I mean, not that
Yeah.
every podcast has to be a video, but like there's something about how crazy their stories are that I would love to see them talking about.
Well,
it,
like,
you
yeah,
know?
like we were talking about how people react. Like, and I think same thing for when people are telling stories, especially a story that is personal to them.
Sure.
The way that they do that, not just in their voice and
Their
inflection and stuff,
expression.
but in expression,
Yeah.
body movements, and language is kind of cool to see. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
that'd be interesting to see that. Video.
Yeah, and like I think about because I could see like you know, if we had like Ryan or Bran on here too, or
yeah.
anybody else, especially two brothers like James and like I listen to Raiders of the Lost podcast. They're a big movie podcast, but it's two twins doing a podcast about movies.
Oh, wow.
You imagine like when they're just messing around and they start dogging on each other about
Yeah.
stuff. It's hilarious,
Sure.
you know. And that's entertaining, you know. That's
Absolutely.
and it's
Yeah.
raw and it's real.
Yeah.
It's not staged. It doesn't feel forced.
Right.
And
No, yeah.
that's the kind of stuff I enjoy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really excited to do this, and we could talk about so much. I don't even know where to begin, but I would like to expand on this and really see where it goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would too. I think there's a lot of, I mean, just in our world today, we know that there's a lot of stuff we could talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Some of it may be controversial.
Sure.
Some of it may not be. Some of it, I mean, I think there's always a level of controversy, regardless of the topic, whether you talk
yeah, it
about
doesn't matter.
sports,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, who was the greatest basketball player? And then that leads to, 10,000 different conversations, whether it was Michael Jordan or it's LeBron or it's whoever, Magic Johnson. It's like, well, yeah, the game's different. And there's always this controversy and debate, regardless of the topic.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. And like nowadays, I feel like especially with like social media, it's gotten worse.
Yeah,
like the
100%.
controversy, it always seems more negative, especially on social media.
Yes.
And like you said with sports and politics, I mean, even right now, like movies and video games it's horrendous that I almost don't want to get involved in it most of the time.
Really?
At least online. I'll talk about it with friends and coworkers and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
God, I see one post about The Last of Us, or I see something about like
Yeah.
Mission Impossible's coming out tomorrow, and like
Right.
Tom Cruise, like that's just another whole thing that's just like it's a controversial topic.
And yeah, it's,
You know?
and at the end of the day, it just talking about a movie or talking about an artist or a song or something that's going on in the political world or in the world in general. It's everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
And everyone's allowed to have an
And you're-
opinion.
Yeah, which is fine. That always just seems to lead. There's always this like you're right though. Like I feel like there's the initial response to from people when they don't like something.
Yeah.
It's just like this vitriol. It's just
Instant attack.
because you can, right?
Right.
Because you wouldn't
wouldn't do
come,
that in
you
person.
wouldn't come at a person like that.
Yeah,
if
most
they were
people wouldn't
sitting
do that
next to
right
you.
here.
Right. Like, hey, you're a piece of shit because you did this, or you like that movie? That movie sucks, or whatever. You're not going to be that aggressive about it.
No. And unfortunately, that's how people are behind a keyboard
Yeah.
or a phone,
Yeah,
you know.
the keyboard warriors, right?
Gosh.
So let's talk about, since we're on a top, since you brought up Mission Impossible, talk about it. Like I've only seen the first two.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I kind of this is going to sound bad, but and I'm just going to say it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just kind of lost interest in it. It just sort of seemed like it was going to be. I take that back. I watched the first two,
Okay.
which I liked. I liked them very much, and I started the third one, and then I watched about an hour or 45 minutes or an hour of the last one, and it just kind of just felt
Yeah.
like it just wasn't doing anything for me anymore.
Yeah, and you know, I think so for me, like I've seen all of them. I've seen them every year they come out. And for me too, like I mean, and it's you know, for some people it's like, oh, it's the next big action blockbuster. Like I just
Right.
want to go see Tom Cruise do crazy stunts.
Which he does his own stunts too.
Which is cool because most
Right.
actors don't do that, and he's
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like that are really into film take it from a filmmaker's perspective, or just as a general moviegoer, you just want to go see the next big thing. And people love franchises. I mean, they milk
True.
everything these days.
Yes.
Whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Mission Impossible, Fast and the Furious is probably the most guilty of that.
Yeah.
But some do it better than others, and I think aside from like the first two, they're not all perfect, and they've not all ever actually had the best box office result. But
Right.
I like them all individually, and like for specific, I like Fallout's my favorite one,
Okay.
which I think was number 6.
Sick.
And then like this one, the last one was Dead Reckoning, and then this one's the Final Reckoning, which is supposed to be the last one,
Okay. Right.
which is like a 2-parter technically. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me too, it's just like one of those things. Like I love film, and I like those movies. I like all his movies, and I'm just real excited to go see it. We're gonna go see it tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
opening
think-
weekend.
You know, and I know you're very into film. I am too. But my weakness when it comes to movies is that I like a particular genre and feel,
Oh yeah,
and so if it doesn't fit in that, then
it's
I don't
just
see
not-
it.
Yeah.
Which is that's not the right way to approach it. But
no, I get it.
I'm one of those people. I like what I like, and that's just
Yeah,
what it's going to be. And sometimes you need a movie to just entertain you.
yeah,
Just
definitely.
to have it.
It doesn't have to do
watch it.
anything like artistic or
Yeah,
crazy
right.
or super deep twisted story.
Yeah.
It just has to entertain you.
Yeah, and I don't need to. I don't have to care about the CGI or
Yeah, right.
or the any of the cinematography or
Yeah.
any of or how does the score fit into the film?
Right. Like I'm not going to see the next big Marvel movie to judge it on the score, like the CGI or
You're just
something.
saying,
Like
okay,
I just
yeah.
want it to have fun,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And they do most of the time. Some are better than others. Actually, we saw Thunderbolts last weekend.
Did
That
you?
was surprisingly good.
Really?
Honestly, the most fun I've had with a Marvel movie since like 2019. So if that tells you anything.
Yeah, and that whole franchise, that whole
I
thing
mean,
got a little,
it's gotten
little
crazy. I mean, when you got big companies like Disney and Lucasfilm and all these other big companies that just they're dishing out money,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why I think stuff gets released so quickly is because there's not as much care put into it as you would want it them to. Whereas like, you know, you wait for like the next Christopher Nolan movie and it's like that dude makes movies. Like he does everything practical. He writes the story.
Yeah.
I mean, the actors, I mean, everything's top notch in those movies.
Right.
Whether you like them or not, you almost have to just respect it for like what goes into it because
Right.
he's one of the fewer like classic filmmakers in Hollywood
Yeah.
now. I mean, there's not too many of them left. Like
Right.
Tarantino's on his way out.
Yeah,
Ridley Scott. I mean, there's
yeah. Ridley Scott, like he had it, like, he kind of had his time.
Gladiator was like
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
I mean that's one of his biggest I think
That's
achievements.
probably I would say, but, without knowing the numbers, but probably
Right.
probably was. Yeah.
But yeah, and that's I don't know. That's why, and like nowadays, I'm finding it even with a lot of the time I have on my hands, I still have a harder time keeping up with everything coming out, whether it's a TV series or a new movie.
Yeah, the volume of content,
Oh, it's insane.
it's just nuts.
Yeah, and like even sometimes I find myself listening to podcasts just as much.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, there's been like 10 movies that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Like I just watched a couple movies from 2024 that I had missed. It's just and like anymore, like even though like I have the movie club for Cinemark, like and get the free tickets, like I don't even find the time to go see everything.
Right.
And like there's 8 movies I want to see this summer, but I'm probably not going to see them all.
Yeah.
At least not right away. And that's another thing. As convenient as it is to have streaming services and watch a movie on your couch and whatever, I personally still love going to the theater.
You like that experience?
I like the
of
experience.
going
I
to the
like
theater. Yeah.
whether I go by myself or I go with Alexis or I go with a friend, it's the anticipation of going, the excitement around the movie, getting a popcorn and a drink and sitting there and having a good time. I love that. And that's something I don't think I could ever not do. Granted, sometimes it's easy to just throw a movie on at home, but
Right.
if it's something that I'm passionate about and excited for, I gotta go see it. Yeah. But the other thing, this is another one, and I know you're not really you're not playing games much nowadays, but
No.
that's another whole industry that is like becoming really oversaturated and corrupted with money and things getting too big.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say it's like anything else when there's a ton of money involved. Wants their piece, right? So
Yeah, they're like, oh, I could make this for $300 million, so it's gonna be good, and we're gonna make money off of it. And then a lot of the times they don't.
yeah,
Something flops or gets a bad score or whatever. Nobody likes it. Nobody plays it or sees it.
yeah.
I mean, I can't say, if anything, and I could be spitballing here, but I feel like now with how everything else is, music's probably one of the safer. So not completely, but maybe not in the mainstream line, but
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
That's exactly where my head went when you said that. Like, I think the outside of the mainstream with music these days is really awesome. There's some really
yeah,
amazing people out there making music that are under the commercial radar,
I was gonna say there's a lot of
like way under the commercial radar.
way under the radar. A lot of really good artists, a lot of good albums coming out
Yeah,
constantly that just nobody ever knows about.
right. And some of those artists are like fantastic to see them play live.
Yeah,
Like I know myself personally, having seen several of them,
right.
and one of them that is Charles Wesley Godwin, who has absolutely blown up in the last year and a half. But I mean, I saw him 3.5 years ago at a place up in Cleveland. There was, like 800 people there.
That's
I
pretty
got
cool.
to meet him.
That's awesome.
Stuff like that.
Is that a bigger venue?
It's at the Beachland Ballroom. You know where that is?
Why does that sound familiar?
They have a couple different spaces within their building, but that's where we saw him, and he was in the bigger area.
Oh, okay.
And I could be.
Do they have like multiple stages there?
They have like
like
two
a
or
small
three.
cove
Yeah,
one
like
too.
and I could be way underestimating the number of people, but it was certainly under 1,000.
Cool.
So.
I like shows like that.
Yeah,
when it's
I
not a
saw-
stadium of thousands
Yeah,
of
and I
people.
saw Shane Smith and the Saints at the same place.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I
which
wanted
is
to go to that.
Crazy to think that they've also played Red Rocks many times. But another band that prior to Yellowstone, they had songs, especially the All I See Is You, which
Right.
just blew them up, and everybody seemed to think like, oh, like they're this new band. They had existed and been playing music years prior to that.
Yeah.
That song wasn't even one of their newer songs, but it was put on the
It's
show.
put on one of the biggest TV shows in
And it
the world,
blew 'em up,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah, what was the Flatland Cavalry too?
Yeah, they've been on there.
Laney Williams
Yeah, Laney Wilson. Yeah,
or Laney
I
Wilson.
mean, Zach
my
Bryan's
bad.
been on there.
Zach Bryan multiple times.
Ryan Bingham.
He played
course.
on there too, didn't he?
Yeah,
They all did.
yeah.
I think
And
at one point,
Ryan Bingham.
Ryan
Not
Bingham-
only is he an actor in the show, but he's also a musician.
Yeah, that's
and
really
has a
cool.
band. Yeah, but yeah, the whole. I don't even know if the right term is independent, because they're not all independent. A lot of them are, though. I mean, if you look at the rise of some of these artists, Red Clay Strays are another good example. That just putting music out there on YouTube.
Yeah, I know.
And people find it, and it just, I mean, that's what Zach Bryan did.
It's
you can
pretty
say what you
amazing.
want how quickly that rise happened, but that's what he did.
I think that's another thing about today versus like, I don't know. I can't really say maybe 30, 40 years ago versus now, like with releasing music.
Well, it was 30, 40 years ago, because we didn't have streaming and we didn't have the internet, we didn't have YouTube, you had to have a record label.
Yeah.
Or you weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
You were not.
No one's playing your song on the radio.
No, because that's what it was all about.
Right.
At
It's
that
about
time
getting
was
the-
it had to be on the radio.
Yeah.
Or some and some of the music that I grew up as a teenager listening to, like some of that new wave and the post-punk era and stuff like that. Without college at that time, the college radio stations were huge for those types of bands to get their music out there, so
Right.
that then they could tour, and they a lot of them played on college campuses. That's how they did a lot of their shows, because they weren't in the mainstream. When you're trying to compete with Michael Jackson, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like what's so crazy about today is like anyone can make music and put it on a platform, just like a podcast. You can
Yeah.
you create it and you upload it and it's just out there for anyone to access. And like, I can speak for us like as our band, Daydreamer. We've been doing this for over a decade, and no joke, I want to say a good amount of our listeners are outside of the country.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
That's
we have a
crazy
solid
to think of.
following in Youngstown, a little bit bigger in like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, more further out in Ohio areas.
Yeah.
And then like throughout the country, it's pretty decent. But like the amount of listeners we actually have outside of the U.S. is wild. And like also the metal like post-hardcore scene is still a little bigger in some of those countries.
Okay.
But it is wild when we like see somebody comment, or we get like somebody from another country say something, and it's just like,
You're like, what?
sometimes we forget that we're like, because most of the time we're just doing this for fun, writing music, playing music live, whatever
Yeah.
we're doing. And then when we finally like sit back for a second, we're like, man, people do listen to us. Like some people give a shit. And that's what's cool about
That's
having a small following, I think. Like some of these other artists.
and I
like,
think that obviously, I'm sure as artists that makes you feel good, that like, because I know personally what you put into it,
Right.
and I know it's not just putting in time. There's a lot of thought and heart that goes into that. So it's got to feel good when you go, oh wow, somebody from Australia.
Yeah,
heard us.
exactly.
And to think that 20 years ago
You couldn't have done that.
that wouldn't happen.
No.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah, it's wild. And it makes me wonder sometimes. I'm like, man, what if a band like, I don't know, for say Metallica, for example, was like formed today versus when they came out? Like
Yeah.
how different that would be for them.
Yeah.
Like just thinking of a band who had to write their music and create things and like basically creating genres and getting a label and playing these world tours and going through all this stuff. And it takes so much more time for
Yeah.
that stuff to happen versus
yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's some bands now that you don't really hear about, and then you might hear one song, and then all of a sudden in 6 months they're the biggest thing in the world for like
Yeah.
a couple years.
Yeah. I remember, as a kid, like you'd always hear these artists do interviews and talk about making the demo tape. We made a demo tape, and then we're riding around the town on our bicycles, dropping it off at record labels,
Right.
in LA or whatever. And you're like, what? And that was how it
Yeah.
had to happen. You had to know, or you had to know somebody that knew somebody that could get that demo tape in the right person's hands.
Right.
To even just to have them listen to it, that's just one thing.
Yeah.
But then to say, oh yeah, this is okay. Yeah, I think we could do something with this. To think that like, and it's kind of shitty in a way that the industry, when you think about it that way, because you're the fate of what you're pouring your heart and soul into to create is in the hands of some executive
Right.
that goes, yeah, I think we can sell a bunch of records and make some money off this
Yeah.
this group of dudes or this
Yeah.
band or whatever. It's like, wait a second, like you're like busting your ass to do this. And more so I think like the emotional effort that goes into it.
Oh, sure.
And then some dude wearing a suit and tie is the guy that says, yeah,
He's like, yeah, I could
Yeah.
sell this,
Yeah.
or your music shit.
Or you
That's no one's gonna like this same old song.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I it's funny. I've watched a lot of music biopics in the last year. I rewatched Walk the Line last year. Still a great movie. We watched the Elvis movie with Austin Butler. Actually, really good.
Okay.
It was awesome. I know these movies don't get everything right. I understand it's a their own version of
Sure.
that person's life. You're not going to get every accurate thing, and I don't think you're supposed to.
And they're not, yeah.
It's not. If it was, it'd be a documentary.
Exactly.
But anyway, and then I watched the Complete Unknown
Yeah. The
Bob Dylan movie.
Bob Dylan
That
story.
movie was great. If you can watch it, it's very good. But like all those movies together, like because they're all from a similar time period.
Yeah.
But it goes into like what those people went through when creating their music. Like, Johnny Cash was some just
Yeah.
poor kid
Yeah.
back from the war, just happened to get some guy at some little label to actually listen to his song. You know, same thing with Elvis.
Elvis, yeah.
You know,
And you think about a person like Elvis, right? And you talked about Metallica and the genre. I mean, that's what Elvis was.
yeah,
At a time like him being in the world at the time that he was in the world making music. That was a whole different genre.
yeah, and a lot of people didn't like it
And
right
people
away
didn't-
because people weren't used to that.
Correct, right. Think about that. You know? And Johnny Cash was similar,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was a similar type of situation with him. It was sort of like, I guess, the beginning of that outlaw country kind of
Yeah, that almost like
thing.
rebel kind of
Yeah,
style of music.
right.
Yeah,
Coming out of, country music existed when he hit the scene, but it was it sounded a certain way. The song structure was the same.
right.
And he decided to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
Not to mention him as a person, his attitude, his whole,
Right.
like the persona of
Exactly.
Johnny Cash also was something that was different.
And I think all three of them kind of had that kind of thing because even in the Bob Dylan movie, he was a folk songwriter,
Right.
And God, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. It was like his mentor, but event.
Folk was he a folk? Was
Yeah.
his mentor a folk singer? Woody Guthrie?
Yes. Yeah. So played by Edward Norton.
Okay.
Really awesome. Eventually they show like in that period where Bob Dylan starts to change his sound and go electric and people hated it. People were pissed. Like all his classic fans were just like and then like he didn't give a shit and he just played it for them.
Yeah.
And people would get pissed and whatever, but like he was putting himself out there more. And Elvis did the same thing. He got into more of like a aggressive kind of,
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah. That
mean-
whole rock and roll was kind of born from that.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And then you fast forward just like from the Bob Dylan era, not that far into when you get into the 70s and guys like Jimi Hendrix. Like,
Oh
you
my
think about
God,
Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix and what he was doing.
Yeah. Just with the guitar in
Just
general.
the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Like, wow.
Yeah. Unreal.
Whole different sound. Just sounded different. And at that time, I think people had grown accustomed to, there was this like sort of that fringe, that was sort of like the pre-punk era in a lot of
Yeah.
ways when it came to music. It's like the 70s, people were more willing to listen to that and hear that, and it was different, and they liked it because it was different.
Right.
And then, over in Europe or in England, all of a sudden this punk stuff starts coming up, and now it's like, okay, it sounds different, and it's fuck the establishment. This is
Yeah.
even better.
Right.
This is even better.
Yeah.
Fuck all of them.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, this is okay. I can get behind this.
Yeah. Yeah. And like even once you get into the 90s, like Nirvana,
Yeah.
they
Same
kind of
kind of-
changed.
same kind of
Same kind of.
attitude toward,
yeah.
toward the establishment kind of thing. Yeah. And then,
And that was another band. They didn't give a shit about
yeah.
any of the media or anything.
Nope.
I always see this it comes up all the time. I see this video of Kurt Cobain and all of them being interviewed on something, and somebody mentions the ticket price for this bigger artist, and he's like, wait, what did you say for that ticket price? And he was like, oh no, fuck that. He's like, our tickets are $15, and he was like just blown away on what like they were charging for tickets for like bigger artists.
Yeah.
He was just like, nah, no way.
Yeah. Those guys were, that's, so yeah, music is like, I've always been fascinated by music. I just think it's like, I'm one of those people that I can listen to just about anything.
I know
I mean, I have a sweet spot right now.
Sure,
but
sure. I do too.
But I've always been just amazed at the different types of music that are out there. Even stuff that's being made today. Not that I'm the biggest fan of. Certainly not a mainstream pop type of fan, but
right.
but there is other stuff out there that's being created today that is neat.
I know, like my music, not that my music taste hasn't always been a variety, but my dad brought me up on classic rock, classic country,
Yeah.
more hard rock and metal stuff too. And once I was like in my teen years and like could, decide what I really wanted to listen to, I was into like a lot of pop punk and emo rock and
Yeah.
and alternative music. And then And then when I really started playing music, I got into like the metal scene for a while. I mean, my band, a couple bands have been metal bands, and I have a huge era of my life in that genre specifically. But then like as I've gotten older, I've really branched out, and I listen to some pop, some blues, some country, you know, bit of everything really. Like I'm so open to everything now.
Yeah.
And Alexis has a very big music what do you call it?
Library.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the other cool thing when you're in a band with four other musicians who also have a wide variety of music, you listen to pretty much everything. And I was talking to Ryan about this recently because he was talking about Sleep Token,
Yeah.
which they're all the rave right now.
Oh, are they?
I don't listen to them personally, really. I've listened to their first album, but I haven't really gotten into them too much because I know he hasn't really ever branched out too much.
He's been in that sort of pen and alternative country.
Right.
I don't even want to call it country. It's more like
Yeah.
red dirt Americana
Right,
type
right.
of music.
And it's great.
I know not that everything has to have a bucket, but
No,
everything
no.
has to have a bucket so we can
But-
describe it.
I was surprised when he had mentioned them
So
because
was
I
I.
was like, oh, cool. Yeah, they're cool. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I haven't actually listened to metal in like 2 years. Not that I don't enjoy it still, but that's just like how much my music has changed.
Yeah.
And like I go back to all that stuff still, and I kind of keep up on what's new in that genre. But you know, I've been listening to him as long as he's been out, but I got really big into Hosier the last couple years, and he's from Dublin, Ireland, and he writes he's like a bluesy rock pop folk kind of guy, I guess. His music's also kind of like each album is very different, so he kind of like each album he very much completely changes the formula, but it works every time.
Yeah.
And that's an artist I really still want to see really soon. But yeah, I've gotten into a lot of like some folk bands, some like indie acoustic artists, a little bit of pop here and there. But yeah, it is just crazy how like just time and like people around you, how much your music taste and things can change.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, even now I'll still go back and listen to classics, and you know, like I'll still listen to Bob Dylan or like Van Halen or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, I've been taking a trip down the 80s road the last,
oh, nice.
all the stuff that I listened to as a teenager. I was like, it's, at the time that stuff seemed so, because I was big into the new wave alternative
Yeah.
stuff in the 80s. And if it wasn't played on mainstream radio, then I liked it.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that was kind of the world that I grew up in. Like my first experience in that world was the Ramones, and I know a lot of people will go, every song sounds the same. Well, it's true, it does.
Sure. But if you really listen to it,
But you also have to think about like we talked about with artists like Elvis or Jimi Hendrix or whatever. You also have to think about the context of the time when this was
Sure.
happening. When the Ramones started, that was sort of like they were kind of an American punk band,
right.
and they didn't want to sound like the Sex Pistols,
Right.
or whatever. And if you look at a lot of artists today, there's a lot of people who are influenced by that, just because of it was just different
Yeah.
at the time. But that was like my first introduction into sort of that alternative stuff. And yeah, so I've been kind of going back and listening to some of those bands that I listen to.
We even started very lightly, not getting crazy, but we started collecting some vinyl here and there too.
Yeah.
I bought her a vinyl player last year, and we've slowly been just collecting some of our favorite records, not necessarily trying to buy everything,
Yeah.
but just like the stuff we listen to the most. So like an album, you can repeat.
What's crazy to me about that whole thing is like, I want to do that too. So there's a record store in Salem, and I was like, I want to go over there because he'll post stuff on Facebook or whatever with pictures of stuff they get in. And he had a couple of like 80s albums that like I used to have a ton of vinyl. Like back in the day, my brother and I, that's what we would do. Like, was go to the record store, and then we would record it on cassette so we could like play it in the car.
Oh, nice.
So we had, I mean, between us, I don't know, we probably had 300 records, maybe more. And then vinyl went out because the CD came along.
Right.
But anyhow, so they got a couple of these. One was the Smiths, and it was like the record was like $50, and I'm like, I remember we used to buy a record for like $13. I'm like, $50 is a lot of money.
Most
to spend
vinyl
on a
now
record.
is about
That's
$30
sort
to
of
$50.
anywhere between 30 and 50
Yeah.
bucks, and I'm like,
And forget it, if you want the deluxe extended edition of their album,
yeah,
it's like $50-$60.
and then or the
exclusive.
the red pressing or the
yellow
mustard
pressing
colored one or whatever. Yeah, it's like
God.
$100 for that.
I know.
Is it that much more expensive to make records today,
And I hate that, like,
or is it
especially
just because they know that people will buy it?
I think it's just because it's in.
Okay.
You know, it's the thing.
Because I mean,
I don't know.
it was the only that was
inflation.
the only way that we had to listen to music back in the day, and you might pay $19 for like one, like if I remember correctly, when I bought the Star Wars soundtrack, it was 2 records.
Yeah.
And I think that was $20.
Right. Speaking of movie soundtracks, we were at the Exchange a couple weeks ago. They had like they have a pretty big vinyl section there. It's massive
they?
now. Yeah, it's
Oh, I'll
huge,
have to
and they have
check it out.
everything. And there is a lot you can get there pretty cheap because they do have a lot of older stuff. But they had like a movie section, and they had like the Raiders of the Lost Ark soundtrack. They had the original Batman that Prince did.
Oh yeah,
What was I gonna say? Oh, the Top Gun soundtrack. I think Alexis bought that one,
nice,
which was pretty cool.
nice.
It's just cool to see all that stuff too.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
It is. Like that was always one of those things too. Like when I was growing up with the soundtrack stuff. Like not that I ever really would buy soundtracks, but
I did.
there's like some
City.
really awesome '80s music on some of those soundtracks. Like Pretty in Pink, for example,
Oh my god,
had like that psychedelic.
that movie is a soundtrack.
It is. Like hers were on there, OMD, some like really cool stuff, and there would also be some unreleased stuff that would come out on soundtracks, like
Right.
Bachelor Party that had Tom Hanks. in it.
Oh yeah.
That had I was a big fan of The Alarm as a kid,
Oh, The Alarm. I forgot about that.
and they had this unreleased. At least was unreleased in the United States. Song was on that soundtrack called "What Kind of Hell," and it was just like, oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
There's some neat stuff out there. On
I
the
was
soundtrack.
really big into movie soundtracks when I was little.
Okay.
Like when the first Spider-Man movie came out, the soundtrack for that was awesome. Even though the movie's terrible, the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck had a banging soundtrack.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it had
Okay.
it had everybody had like Jimmy Eat World. It had
Jeez.
it had Seether. It had what was the other one? Nickelback.
Chevelle.
Yeah. Fuel was on there.
Fuel, by the way, will be playing at the Rib. I call it the Rib Burn Off. I know that's not what it's called now at the mall.
Oh, go get your tickets.
Yeah, get your tickets. Scott Stapp had to cancel. He was supposed to play.
Well,
I'm making that up.
I gotta give him some credit. He's been there the last couple of years.
He has.
I saw them. They were
because
good.
of the tour with Creed.
Right.
Which I would actually pay money to see this
They're good.
Creed tour.
I would love to go.
I would actually see.
Is this the one that Three Doors Down just dropped off of?
They did because the guy's got
Brad's got stage 4 cancer.
Stage 4 cancer, yes. But that was supposed to be Creed, Three Doors Down. Is Nickelback part of that?
I don't know if they were.
I don't know if they were or not.
That would be
I know-
awesome too.
I do know it was Creed and Three Doors Down. But,
Man,
there might be somebody else on the ticket. I don't remember.
that's really sad because Three Doors Down's actually one of the bands that my dad. It was like the first like
were-
rock band I
They
got
were freaking
introduced
cool,
to.
man. They
Yeah.
had some really cool
When
stuff.
I was young, I thought they were the shit.
They had some really cool stuff.
And even now, like at their age and their
Yeah.
time in their career, they're still very good.
Yeah.
And I would love to see them. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully he recovers from all that. And
Yeah.
they played around here last year during the summer with Creed, and I missed it.
Oh, wow.
It was in Youngstown. It was at the
Amphitheater or at Cavelli?
Cavelli.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Wow. I didn't realize that.
yeah.
I don't know how I missed that.
I
would
know.
have liked to have seen that.
I know Dakota. I think Dakota went
Yeah, I would actually like to see
because he got free tickets off of the radio or something.
They called in. You're calling
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
15. You
like,
want
"Hi,
two
caller
tickets?"
15. You just want tickets to Three Doors Down and
Hell
Creed this
yeah.
summer."
That's crazy. That's crazy. But they were like that, and so that era of music that Fuel, Nickelback, Creed, Three Doors Down, Chevelle.
3 Days Grace.
Yeah, like that. There was some shit. Don't get
There
me
was
wrong.
some bad shit, but
But there was also some gems in there,
yeah,
like Chevelle. Okay,
yeah,
they had some decent songs,
Right.
and it was some of that music that you could just kind of like get into, like
Yeah.
it was upbeat, kind of get you going a little.
that was
bit.
my dad's workout music.
Yeah, that was a thing.
That was the thing,
That
you know.
that was it. You know, Godsmack.
Godsmack.
Right, I saw that
Man.
live. I'm not.
Oh, that would be
I'm not.
sick.
I'm not afraid to say
That would be
I
awesome.
did see Godsmack. Yeah,
That's cool.
I saw Tool also.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
My funny story. One of my friends from high school, their dad was supposed to be the original vocalist
For
for Tool. Yeah,
Instead of Maynard.
yeah.
Really?
He was like this close.
Damn.
I don't know how that didn't happen, but
They're actually fairly impressive to see live.
oh, I could imagine.
They can yeah, they're pretty good.
You know, and I don't know how you feel about this band. I was very young when I got introduced. My mom wasn't real happy about it, but my dad let me listen to them. Slipknot.
Slipknot, yeah. So
They're crazy live.
So my first exposure to Slipknot, I was familiar with them, but I went to Ozfest one year.
Oh, that's the perfect place.
So yeah, so that was my first live exposure to Slipknot. Marilyn Manson,
Oh, hell yeah.
which that was like a spectacle in and of itself.
Oh, I'm sure.
The live stuff, there was things going on that
Yeah.
it's like okay. But that was an interesting experience. But yeah, Slipknot, yeah, I don't really have an opinion or a feeling about
Yeah.
them one way or the other. I know they're.
I just think they're fun.
I was never a fan of the whole like let's dress up and wear costume shit. Like I never liked Kiss. For
It
the
sounds
same
funny
reason.
from when you say like, it's Halloween, guys. Let's go play a show.
Let's like dress up like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and go play some music for people. Is this like weird? I just
Yeah.
never. But thinking back to the '80s, there were bands that did that too.
Sure.
In that time frame, Kiss,
Yeah.
of course, was probably the most famous one. That,
Nikki Sixx was kind of around a
Yeah.
little bit.
I mean,
Not too much,
what
but-
Motley Crue did was
Yeah.
somewhat like that. Then you had
Very like you
Alice
had that
Cooper.
like that era of like the girly hair band guys.
the metal, the hair bands,
The hair
yeah,
bands,
the hair bands,
yeah.
Which
Which
that
was
was
awesome.
the whole thing. That was the whole thing when I was in high school. Like we had that group of people that liked that kind of stuff, you know, and it was just like, what, you know. But now I look
Twisted
back
Sister.
at it, and I don't hate Judas Priest,
Right.
and I don't, and even some of like the Ozzy Osbourne solo stuff that he
Oh,
did, you know. Then I was like, this guy, what the fuck? But now I listen to it, and I'm like, yeah, that was actually that's actually not bad.
I actually, when I was around that time, because my dad obviously showed me all that stuff, but I was more into Ozzy's stuff than Black Sabbath. I thought it was better personally.
I kind of did too.
And Randy Rhoads super influenced me to play guitar.
Okay. Yeah.
He was another one of my early ones.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny though. That's like that's funny to think about that time frame in music because there was like that whole there was the Motley Crue and you know of course Def Leppard. I wouldn't put Def Leppard quite in the same category, but I'm like you had Poison, Rat, White Snake. You know some of those.
That's one thing that I envy.
it's like-
Me and my friends talk. I can't imagine living through that era. Like being alive and experiencing those bands for the first time.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be wild,
well and and you had Bon Jovi.
right?
Was another one that and they freaking blew up.
Yeah.
Like and some of their stuff was actually not too bad.
Yeah.
But it's like it wasn't my thing then, but yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other
I really like the other two artists like for classic artists were Rush and Pink Floyd.
Rush was I saw Rush live. I got a chance to see them
Yeah.
live when I was in college. And I'm not a musician obviously, but Neil Peart playing drums. Wow.
Yeah, it's something else.
He is he was
There was no limit to what
Yeah.
to what he could do.
the drum kit, like we go to this show to see, and you know, I don't even remember who was the opening act, but when they came out on stage, you know, and he's got this drum kit. And that would have been like probably like 7-ish, probably, and he had like the spin
The
around.
spinning
he had like,
kit.
Yeah, he had
It was fully wrapped around him.
So he had like a 360 degree with like 400 drums, and, you know. It was insane.
Yeah. And Geddy Lee too. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the dude could sing. He could play bass. He could play
Yeah.
keyboard.
Yeah.
Alex Lifeson's awesome guitarist.
Yeah,
I mean, they were a solid.
they were cool.
That's another 3-piece. That's just like because there's not a lot of
Not a
3-piece
lot
bands.
of three-piece bands out there.
At least
that were really,
early on.
Really, yeah, the Police, of course.
Yeah, the Police.
Police, and then and Rush, of course. But yeah, my roommate in my freshman year in college is the one who introduced me to Rush because again, I was telling you I was coming out of that like new wave,
Right.
anything that's not on the mainstream is what I'm
You're all
listening
about.
to, right? And he's like, "You ever heard of Rush?" I'm like, "I've heard of them." He's like, "You're a listener to music?" I'm like, "No." And I was like, and he was a bass player himself, both classical and electric. He was really good.
That's cool.
And he was part of the jazz band at the college.
Nice.
And stuff, and he was good. But yeah, he introduced me to Rush, and I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
okay, I like this."
That's how I felt when I listened to Pink Floyd.
yeah.
And funny
Another
enough,
one.
the first album I was introduced was not Dark Side of the Moon. It was Metal,
Oh, okay.
which isn't. I mean, Pink Floyd fans love that album, and most
Sure.
people know it, but it's not the most like known album from
Right.
them. And there's this one song on there. I think it's at the end. It's called Echoes, and the song is 23 and a half minutes long, and it's one of these songs that just takes you on some kind of journey because it starts. It's almost all instrumental.
Okay.
There's some
Yeah,
vocals like sprinkled throughout the song, but it's mostly instrumental. They did some really crazy like atmospheric stuff with their guitars and sounds in it. It's just
Yeah.
wild. And then I obviously from there I went on and listened to the rest of their discography, which is just insanely long. But it's just another one of those things like from that time, like it was just another new thing, changing music and how you play your instrument and how you write. And
I have a funny story about my introduction to Pink Floyd.
oh, okay.
I'm trying to think about how old I would have been. Probably like 15. So this new guy moves in next door to us, right? And it's like he's a single dude.
Okay.
I'm 15. Guy's got a motorcycle. Just, he's cool.
Yeah, cool
He's
guy.
Probably like mid 20s, right? Like me and my friends are like, yeah, we got to be friends with this guy.
I had a friend like that.
So I don't even know why we went over to his house. I don't know if I don't remember if we were gonna ask him if he wanted to play frisbee or something. I don't know, whatever, wiffle ball, something. I don't know. So there's like 3 of us. We go and we knock on his door, right? He opens the door. It's all dark in there, and you smell weed. And he's baked. This dude is like flat baked, and we're like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, watching the wall, man. I'm like, what? Watching the wall. I'm like, huh? Like, what?
What's the
He's
wall?
like, Pink Floyd, man. Come on, dudes. Come on in. So we like go sit down and watching it on
You and who did
VHS.
this?
2 of my
your friends.
2 of my buddies.
That's
that I hung out
awesome.
with. That was my introduction to Pink Floyd, but I didn't smoke any marijuana
Yeah.
that day. But it was interesting. I know. I
That's
was like, I was
awesome.
worried that I was going to go home, and my mom was going to
And
be
be
like,
like,
"What are you? Where
Were
have
you doing
been?"
drugs?
Yeah, because he literally lived right next door to us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We had a friend lived like we were here. He lived like 3 houses down across the street. His name was Gino. His dad had passed away a few years back. It was him and his mom and his little brother. And this kid, so keep in mind, this is like 2005, right?
Okay.
This kid dressed and looked like he was from the 80s. He had denim jeans, denim jacket. He had like this like curly messy hair, these old glasses. He had like an old Mustang in his garage. He was a gearhead.
Oh, wow.
He had a motorcycle. He played this old Strat guitar. He actually is the reason I know how to play guitar, period. And in his bedroom, he just always had on like what's Summer of '69? Who's that?
Brian Adams.
He had Brian Adams on all the time and Ozzy, and like that was just his like whole
You're
vibe.
like, this dude is cool.
This dude
right?
is stuck in the '80s, and I loved it. He was cool. He had this old bike that we used to ride bikes together,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and he was awesome. And his brother was the same way.
That's
All
crazy.
denim, longer hair.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, and they were kind of like the weird kids, but they were cool as hell.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they were.
They kind of felt like the Lost Boys, honestly.
Oh, dude. Yeah. That's crazy.
In 2005,
to
yeah.
be that.
And I was like an emo kid then, so like,
So that was like a whole new world. To you.
yeah, to me, I
You
was
were
like,
seeing,
whoa, what the hell?
Like, what is this?
Yeah, I was wearing all black and skinny jeans and long emo hair, and
Oh, that's funny.
it was
is
funny.
funny.
Even my parents at the time were like, Kid's nice, but he's a little weird.
Yeah.
He's from like
Oh.
our era.
If you only knew. Right.
It's summer of '69 every year at his house.
Shoot.
But that was awesome. He was like, those were like the kids you rode around the neighborhood with.
Yeah.
Rode out to a lake once and went fishing and fell out of a boat, and it was cool. They were just cool people.
Dang, that's awesome.
Like, yeah.
I like that. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. I'm not even sure because I don't, with me recording on this camera, I don't have my my time. I don't even know how long we've been doing this.
We've been going for probably pretty close to an hour. It's an hour in.
We're probably thinking we want to try to keep these about an hour. I mean, for now, it doesn't have to be strictly an hour,
Right.
but
For now, I guess. Yeah. I thought
but-
we filled that time up pretty easily.
yeah, I think so too. But this is our first episode. We plan on kicking this off here, and hopefully we'll have more content for you guys shortly. But if you can, give us a like, follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. I'm going to get all this stuff uploaded to everything as soon as we get done editing all these. But leave us some comments, tell us some stories, favorite movies, music, just crazy stories in general. And we're just here to hang out and talk and have a good time. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.